I am absolutely delighted to introduce Mr. AI of NI, Jason Bell, who will be discussing data is business and business is data. Thank you.
Oh, okay, one of those intros. Thank you. Hello. Yeah, I know it's 2:30 in the afternoon, you've had your lunch and you're all exhausted, but hello. That's better. Okay, it's great to be back in Belfast. Right, first off, I want to dedicate this talk to Professor Paul McKevitt. He was a Professor of Artificial Intelligence at McGee, a huge supporter of mine. He passed away, sadly, at the end of September. He brought the Leibniz Prize to Derry in 2013, which is essentially the Turing test for chatbots. So this, the interest in chatbots has been going on a long time, not just in the last 10, 12 months. So that's where we are. My phone is on airplane mode. Heckle, do what you want, really don't mind. I will check afterwards. Christmas card lists are assembled based on what happens there. So, I stood on this stage, in this hall actually, this time last year. And that was in October 22. There's the idiot. There's the ELO rating score for chess players. Was anyone here last year? A few of you. And you came back. The trauma must have worn off. Excellent. So we were talking about just data in general and all that kind of thing, and I upset a few folk. People can't go to the supermarket anymore. That kind of thing. Lauren, are you in the room, Lauren? No, she's not. Right, okay. And then a month later, 73 years in the making, this arrived. And I tried it. It's all right. Not bad. The most impressive part of this really is this bit here, which is the UI that everyone is now used to in terms of artificial intelligence. That alone is not worth 98 billion quid, though. Move on to February 2023. On LinkedIn, everyone took confidence spray. That's real. I did not make that up. That exists. You can actually buy it. First thing that happened, blockchain investment tanked by 93%. I was delighted. Yes, thank you. Rounds of applause. Secondly, every Web3 expert on LinkedIn became an AI expert overnight. You know it's true. If you did it yourself, fair play. I have nothing against you. We're going to do AI. I need to add this to my list of things that we're going to do. Now, I asked the question, when you say AI, do you not mean artificial insemination? Because that's what it means as well. But apparently it was the computing stuff. So I added it to my list of things that we're going to do. It's quite a list. It's developed over time. I arrived in Northern Ireland in 2004, and you've all been quite busy on what you're going to do. So, who still gets paid with Bitcoin? None? Oh, there's a shock. Anyway, one thing did happen. I had a huge wobble mentally about all of this. And the reason was anyone in Liberty IT's talk, the first talk this morning, about Copilot? It was a good talk. I tried Copilot for the first time, and then I realized that my career is basically over in 5 years' time. And I didn't know what to do. Because on one hand, I had all these new AI experts. On the other hand, I had the developer side of things could dry up. It's not easy finding work at the minute. I mean, the last headlines of the last couple of weeks play that out. So I was left with a decision, and oddly enough, it was when Professor McKevitt passed away. I went back and looked at his website. If you look at his website, it's built in text format. It's old school HTML. I absolutely adore it. I love it. It reminds me of the internet that I loved. I do not love the internet now. But there was a word that just jumped out on me, citations, and I thought, hang on, I've written 2 books on machine learning. I wonder if anyone's mentioned it. And it turned out they had quite a lot, actually, which was a bit surprising. And I turned up in 56 patents for some phone company, Apple. That was it. Don't ask me why, don't ask me how, but they are there. So it got me thinking about AI, where we stand with it, whether we're in a bubble or not, because I think we are. Okay, hands in the room. Who thinks there's an AI bubble? Oh, quite a few of you, actually. Oh, that's more than I was expecting. Excuse me. I think there is. Because that looks like a bubble to me. Not a buble, a bubble. You have 5 seconds to take a photo of that slide and figure out what it says. Hint, Google Lens. There was a previous bubble. Surprise, surprise. Blockchain. So we know there are cycles to all of these things. And if you look back, and that list of JSON we're going to do is a good example of that. We've had the iPhone thing. We had the App Store. We had mobile apps on websites. We then had big data, some of which some companies are still catching up on, but that's a different conversation for a different time. And things have progressed. You always have a bubble, and there's always a cycle, and there's always a time to that cycle. Right now, we are in an AI bubble. It started to dip. Searches on generative AI and artificial intelligence started to dip. Machine learning, though, interestingly, just sort of shouldered out, which gave me a bit of faith. It means that there's still life in tabular data, and not everyone's gone mad for generative AI. Until you look on LinkedIn and YouTube, and then everyone's gone mad on generative AI and prompt engineering and all the rest of it. Now, I think prompt engineering is a race to the bottom, because obviously what will happen is we will create more new prompts, which will then get fed back into a LLM, then becoming a cousin of its former self. You'll see how it goes, and therefore the number of requirements for prompts will, they'll go down. So, LinkedIn is a mess now, thanks to all of this. It's great. But it's left one thing in my mind, based on what we've seen with ChatGPT and other language models, which is what's true? What are the risks? And is there uncertainty? So we need to start at the start, and I'll be clear. My issue is not with ChatGPT. It is not with large language models. They are very, very clever things. My issue is with people, or idiots. Should I call them idiots? No, I shouldn't call them. People, users, who think that this thing is sentient, it's got a brain, and what it's saying is actually legitimately true. LLMs do not hallucinate. They don't. They can't. They can't hallucinate because they do not have context on the text that they're predicting. There's a bunch of prompt engineers in the room now hating me. And when we get to this kind of thing, where we're willing to put this kind of responsibility into a chatbot, we have a huge problem. I hope this headline is false. I hope it's media hype. I hope to God it doesn't exist. If anyone can name the album that cover, that painting by Guy Voucher landed on, back in 1989. You have much kudos from me. How did we get here? We need to go back in time a bit. Let's go back to 350 BC. It's not a half-hour talk, it's around about 6 months. We've gone through phases of probability and truth and searching for them. It's ebb and flowed. The Greeks were looking at probability, not so much truth. Pythagoras then went and looked for truth instead, based on what Plato had said about Socrates. Through the Middle Ages, religion crept in, and then it became about truth and divine truth. During the Renaissance, there was still truth, and then we started looking at mathematics and getting more interested in that. By the time we get to Pascal and Fermat, we're talking about probability and statistics. We're back to prediction and guesswork and data and what might happen. Not will happen, but might happen. Today, we're on prediction, but we're using prediction in such a way that we don't know where it could possibly lead to. So, the Greek word, ekos, means plausible or probable. I didn't want to offend anyone, so I did put stars and, I missed. I was in the speaker's lounge earlier on and I moved the slide. Oops. Anyway, turns out the main thing you need to know about Socrates, which is new information, he can play the theremin really well. Socrates said ekos was the likeness of truth and not the actual truth. The interesting part of this with ekos is that the Greeks didn't have a number system at that time. It hadn't been invented, but they were already talking in the realms of probability. They used to gamble, but they didn't have dice because they didn't have numbers on them. They used knuckles instead. Work that one out. Whose knuckles? Don't know. Aristotle, the first prompt engineer, while they speak plausibly, they do not speak the truth. Where is the truth? And through time, we moved through all this probability stuff. But what we did have when we were looking at probabilities was data. I maintain that LLMs are not predictions. They don't hallucinate, but they're plausible. The output is plausible while it's not true. Everybody with me? Anyone disagree with me? Nobody? Oh, cool. So LLMs are essentially a plausibility engine. It might get all that wrong, including facts. So why do we use it? What are we looking for in a language model, knowing it's wrong, or could be wrong, or will probably be wrong? What you're looking for is an emotional connection with the output of the language model. You have an expectation of what you want to see. And this is summarized in, this was originally a paper. I spoke to the author of a book called Mind Market Games, called Denise Shull, and she took trading floor experiences and matched them with neuroscientists. She majored in neuroscience. And I asked the question to her, because she correlated emotion with stock trading, and you still need the emotional context. You can't be a complete sociopath and cut it out. You still need it in there. So I asked the question. She came back with this paper and said, take a look at this and see what you think. And this was by a gentleman called Wu. And they have this Bayesian network. And we already, before we do anything, we already have a belief and a desire of what the outcome is. We believe, we think we know what's going to happen. We want this to happen. And depending on what the action that we take, the outcome, will either be happy with the we'll either don't like the reaction we see, or we like it. It's already premeditated about what we're looking for here. It's in here. It's not in the LLM. That's kind of truth. Everybody with me so far? Everyone think, who's this lunatic on the stage talking? I haven't heard a whistle yet, Bolster.
There's time.
No, I thought there might be. Actually, there's a gentleman in the back wearing exactly the same shirt as you, and he looks exactly the same. I think it's your doppelganger in the audience. Sorry. Risk. So I said truth, risk, uncertainty. Risk. I like risk, not the game, I'm rubbish at it. But risk as a concept to profit. So, this gentleman here, Frankie, lovely fella, he was manager of a record shop in York called, ready for this, Foreplay. Vinyl, cassettes, DVDs and videos. That's how far back it was. And there was no computer. 1991, there was no stock computer, there was no barcode scanner, there was nothing. When CDs came in, for example, we took them out of the boxes, we put them in cardboard sleeves, and we filed them. On the cardboard, we had the date and the amount of stock that came in. And over time, you'd see the patterns emerging. With Everything I Do It For You by Bryan Adams, it went across 3 bits of cardboard because we had to order that many of them. It was #1 for 17 weeks, I think it was. It was an awful song. Anyway, so how do you do all that prediction with just a calculator and some cardboard? And that's what we did. And it wasn't across it was across about 6,000 or 7,000 different product lines. It was a big task. And you get it wrong. So, singles used to come out every week. And you just don't know. The record company would nudge you, obviously, take 10. No, it sounds awful. But then the buying patterns would start coming, and people would start asking for stuff. And you start to figure out and feel it. And most of it's good. I mean, there's only 55 million nerve endings down here that feed back to the brain, so you have a rough idea. And that's how we did it. We got it wrong. This guy gave me a lot of grace sometimes. You'd over-order things and they stay in stock, and next thing, head office is on the phone going, what are you doing? The cash flow's awful. But you get used to it. Your predictions get better over time as well. With that experience, you get better predictions. And right now, what we're doing is we're delaying that experience and learning and just passing it off straight into an LLM or other kind of neural network, whatever you want to do with it, without the context of knowing what the expectation of the answer is going to be. So we've got uncertainty, where risk is I have information, I have to make a decision. Uncertainty is I have no information. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll just have to observe it and see. So, I've written, like I say, written 2 books on machine learning. The chapter on neural networks, which I wrote back in 2014, there was a huge caveat in the text. Neural networks used to be your last port of call. They were the thing you used when every other model type or algorithm did not give you a decent accuracy. Only at that point you started throwing things into a neural network to see what would happen. Unsupervised learning. Throw data at it, see what gives. We weren't even talking about synthetic data at that point. We were just talking about the data we had. Now, obviously, with neural networks, you need a gargantuan amount of data in order to get a good neural network. Most people don't have that. Even to this day, startups I talk to do not have enough data. That's where we start the conversation. How are you going to get your data? How long is that going to take? We're going to do machine learning, Jace. Well, no, you're not. Save yourself some money. Do this bit first. So the slide from last year, everyone talks about this, it's quite fun. Data, do something in the middle, insight. That's basically machine learning and artificial intelligence. Anyone going, oh, this model's biased, especially with the neural network, yeah, it is, because you put the bias in it. It's always there. Your bias is forced into the neural network to attempt to push an activation function to say, yeah, trigger this node or not. you are always implying a biased neural network. Whereas if you had a Bayesian network, your probabilities are already defined. You don't need to push and pull it. It's mathematical at that point, and it's explainable. That isn't. Well, it is, but with much difficulty. And each neuron calculation is actually quite simple. Say we've got 3 input nodes there and 3 weights. So it's input node value times the weight. We sum all those together, and then we add the bias at the end. So we call that the weights times the bias is the dot product, basically. And then we add the bias, and then we push it through the activation function, whichever that is going to be, whether that's going to be a TAN, a sigmoid function, or a ReLU or a leaky ReLU or something like that. Okay? But the idea of the bias function is to try and force, or you can go the opposite direction and pull it back. So what we're doing is having human decisions in how those models are made. Therefore, every AI model is human. It starts off with human input, human data. Nothing appears out of thin air. If I came to you asking for a model to be built, I'm coming to you because I know you've got experience of these things. I'm not just kicking whatever into the long grass and seeing what happens. I come to you because you have experience. Your AI is human. So I have no trust, no faith or experience if I'm building a model from scratch. We just have to see what happens. The thing we have now are models where we do not know what's inside. LLMs being a really good point in case for that, because something like the Llama models are like 170 billion parameters. How do you even trace or track what's going on in there? You can't. You can't. Where's the data come from? Well, pretty much all the internet. We'll get off the topic of certain companies paying Kenyans $1 an hour, $1.32 an hour, to go through the really awful stuff and causing trauma and all the rest of it. We don't know what's in the model. If we cut it in half, we need to have a big saw, we still wouldn't know, really. We wouldn't be able to prove anything. That's the bit that bothers me, because we're putting so much faith into something we don't understand. So, I was in a conversation with James Governor, who is co-founder of RedMonk, the analyst firm, and he threw out a statement that just made my ears prick up. He says, what about an AI bill of materials? That's it. Okay, that's interesting. But what's in a bill of materials? Well, first of all is the hardware, because this stuff costs money. If I was to take, right now, I looked at this afternoon during my moment of zen in the speaker's lounge, surrounded by crisps and water. If we take an 8-core NVIDIA A100 GPU box, varying prices between $12 and $36 an hour, it's going to cost you over $100,000 a year just to run. If you were going to run it 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, which you really wouldn't want to be doing. You want to be doing it for training. Inference, i.e. prediction, costs money, ongoing. No one's really talking about that. I think the next key, because there's obviously a shortage of GPU, is finding a way of being able to do inference and prediction on CPU as cheaply as possible. If anyone works that out, they're the ones that are going to be rich. The next thing is actually the data. Data privacy's kind of vanished. That's the harsh reality of it. We do care more about data integrity. We care how our data is being used against us. That's what we care about. I want to know how it's used. And with ChatGPT, or anything that OpenAI touched, we don't know. They took it. It was, we'll ask forgiveness, but not seek permission. 2024 is just going to be a field of IP law cases. And also, I was trying to battle with good data and bad data, rubbish data, and all the rest of it. The only way I could put it in my head was like the mortgage-backed securities, where you had different grades of mortgage in a product. I think we have the same kind of thing in an LLM. We have good data and we have garbage. So, is the data clean? Does it need cleaning? What do? Do we remove missing data, or we try and replace it with synthetic replace missed data? Do we need to add more data to it? Do we need to augment more data to get a better model? And who are we going to offend if we actually start using it? Next, we move on to the code. It's just ones and zeros. What I found interesting, though, was on the same machine, on my Mac M1, my Mac Mini M1, I should say, if I take the same data for both an R multiple linear regression model and do the same in Python with scikit-learn, the accuracies are different, albeit by 2%, but they're different. Sorry, 0.2%, not 2%. Now, on small inference data, that may not mean too much. But when you start getting into big prediction volumes, it means that you're going to be wrong quite a lot. So we need to know what languages are being used in the models. We need some form of lineage in all of this. And we need to know what happens, can we reproduce it, who's accountable, is it ethical? You know? So that's a bit small, actually, but I did a GitHub repo, and that is essentially a BibTeX format of a AI bill of materials for a model. I'm now trying to figure out how I can do a machine-generated version of that when a model is built. Hugging Face have a model card already, but it's like GitHub documentation readmes. The quality is very dependent on who's making the model in the first place. You'll find a bunch of llama models up there with no documentation in them. It's still down to individual responsibility. Lastly, what about me? How do I perceive the model that I'm building? Am I emotionally in check? There was something in that Liberty IT talk this morning, first thing. There was a paradox between developers starting to use Copilot, and they asked them one day and said, hate it, and the next day they loved it. But what emotional state were those developers in between the 2 days? Nothing may have actually changed apart from how they felt. So we need to, as developers, we need to be able to control our emotions as well, and our behavior in how we build stuff. You need to do as much work on yourself as you do on the data. That's the harsh reality. That is me. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
Jason.
Colin.
I just caught the second half because my noise-cancelling earbuds packed up halfway through. But what would you predict to be? Sorry, Bolster just getting that now. What would you predict to be the greatest fallout from trust in LLMs?
Fallout of trust?
Well, fallout in the trust of LLMs. So you're talking about what's happening in the black box. We don't know what's the integrity of data. So therefore, people are going to be progressively making more significant decisions over time, and at some point, something's going to fall over big time, and those decisions are going to be wrong. Have you any thoughts about what's going to be the worst outcome of that?
Well, the worst outcome is really dependent on what the use case is of them using the LLM in the first place. Plus, there's no chain of responsibility. If I went to OpenAI, Microsoft, or anything like that right now and just went, there's a problem here, I don't think I'm going to get a response, even whether I pay for it or not. It's like, well, the model's there. It was trained up to 2021. We've told you to use it with these constraints, that it's not accurate. It doesn't have the correct, it may not give you the correct facts, information about people, places, all the rest of it. So it's used as seen, with no warranty. So I don't know. That's the real answer to it, because I don't think many people know. This is it. With blind trust, we've just gone in and started using this thing. And am I worried? Yeah, I am. Now, what I predict will happen next year is VCs will cool off on investing on AI for most things. VCs have already been told they're not interested in chatbots. Turn them down. You know, and there's loads of wrappers. Most AI companies are now wrappers to the OpenAI API, not actual AI products. They're rare because the time to build, the cost to build, they're crazy. You need deep pockets for that kind of thing. So it's a difficult question to answer, Colin. I'll be honest with you. I really don't know. It's anyone's guess.
Brilliant. Next question.
So basically there is this gap where if you're expecting it to give you a factually correct, accurate sort of answer, big sort of gap there. Mm-hmm. But there's not a significant value in having something that you can interact with programmatically that effectively gives you a human-like kind of interaction with your data. Like the flaw is valuable as well.
It could well be. You may find happy accidents. And I wouldn't discount that. I agree with you there. But how many happy accidents would you actually find? I really don't know. And this is part of the problem. I think no one really knows. And this is what causes the sort of, you have a camp that absolutely love it, and you have a camp that are absolutely quaking at the minute about what could possibly happen. Now, it's taken to the extreme of, well, AI will create human extinction. No, it won't. Humans will create human extinction, no problem at all. We're really good at that. We've got catalogue evidence of it. What will probably become lesser, and there will be a resurgence of, is creativity. Because AI crushes creativity at the minute, I would say. Midjourney being a good example of that. There's AI, audio, video, and all the rest of it. I think there'll be a resurgence of actual creativity, which would be great. Can't wait. But yeah, there will be happy accidents. But you don't know if you found them or not. Because the thing's plausible every time you put a prompt in. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
But it's like, it's how people feel about the interaction.
Absolutely.
Like, I fully agree. Like, it's not a magic bullet. It's not one single thing. Nothing that's ever come out is...
It's the expectation effect.
But it has a value in itself.
Yeah, I agree.
Wonderful. I'm afraid that's all we've got. Oh, okay. Well, we'll make it quick.
No, don't.
We've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. Two very, very, very quick questions. I mean, the first, so the first is about carbon on the environment. I mean, you can kind of boil this down to a bill of materials, but have you thought about the carbon cost of all of that?
No, but I know someone who has, and I'm not going to say who it is, but I'll tell you later on.
Okay.
Because we're related, so. Okay. I haven't, but I mean, I've seen the numbers bandied around. Well, first of all, OpenAI make a loss on every time you put a prompt in. So keep putting prompts in. And secondly, the cost to the environment is, I read it was like 1 bottle of water for every query that happens. And we'll be at the stage where the number of LLMs will require the electricity of the Netherlands, is something I read last week. So yeah, there are huge implications on that. Azim, I forgot his second name. He wrote the exponential effect. He does a newsletter every week. He posted yesterday and said, do you think by 2075 we'll be doing cloud in space? Like cloud computing in space? And I just replied to him and said, don't give me ideas. So it's all possible. And your second question, sir?
It's a much more pertinent question. Your template for your slides, is it based on a Taylor Swift t-shirt?
Is it based on what?
A Taylor Swift T-shirt.
No, it's not actually.
Okay.
I just like
She's
the-
suing, by the way.
Is she? Bring it on.
Well, we really, really have run out of time, but I'm pretty sure that Jace is going to be hanging around us for another little while. So
Possibly, I don't know. I
mean-
might be kidnapped.
you very possibly could be, but if there's an expert in the room, please go and seek their advice, and you couldn't get anything better than Jason Bell. So can we all just give one massive round of applause to Jason?